To start off, I want to share something my neighbor said to me. I know God moved you here next door to me for a reason. Hiya, I'm Krystal, and this is my story about responding to God's gentle nudges. God said for us to share the good news of Jesus with those around us. I'm more of an introvert, so the thought of being bold and sharing what I believe with strangers is terrifying and makes my palms sweat. But I want to share my story of obedience in hopes that it will bring you some encouragement in your own life. Our family was living in Regina, and we knew that we wanted to move to Moose Jaw to raise our family. And after a few months of searching, we eventually found a house that we were excited about and made the move to Moose Jaw in 2013. I met our neighbor Trina while we were both working outside in our front yards. At first, it was just a friendly wave and a pleasant hello, and then it turned into short conversations about our common interests in gardening and flowers. Over time, we learned more and more about each other, and our friendship grew. In the early stages, sometimes when I was baking bread, I would sense God telling me to bring her over a loaf just to be a friendly neighbor. I didn't share my faith with Trina for the first few years. I was so shy and fearful that she would feel awkward around me if I did. Whenever we would talk, if she hinted at a need, I would send up a silent prayer or pray for her when she came into my mind later in the day. Soon, she became a constant in my prayer life. As we became closer friends, Trina would open up a little bit more each time and share some past hurts and struggles. She told me later that once she found out we were religious, she was worried that we would judge her and was totally surprised when we didn't. I remember her telling me one time that she could sense something different about me and my family and that she could trust me. I would tell her that if she ever needed anything, I was right next door or just a text away. One night at the end of 2017, Trina messaged me saying she needed to talk. So I went over there in my PJs and listened while she shared her struggles. I believe it was the first night that I shared about Jesus with her and how he was involved in my life. And just between you and me, I was so nervous to share. My hands were sweating and my heart was racing. But as I shared a little bit of my story and how Jesus worked in my heart and in my life, I felt such a peace. We chatted and cried, and at the end, I asked if I could pray for her. Such a God moment. I haven't always felt comfortable praying out loud, and to be honest, I'm still working in that area. But I knew that in that moment, I needed to, and that Wendy needed to hear it. After I prayed, she squeezed my hands, and you could see some of the weight just lift off her shoulders. We could feel the presence of God in that room. Over the next 3 years, there would be times that we would just share about our daily lives, and other times where we would just share at a deeper level. Each time, it was a little easier to share God's heart for her and to pray with her. There were many times that I remember when she would share what was on her heart. The Holy Spirit would nudge me with a Bible story, a verse, or an event from my past that God had worked in my life that would relate to her situation. This was such a cool experience to have these random stories or verses pop in my head. In the past, I haven't always known when I was hearing God's voice, so to have this experience was so cool. And it was so beautiful to see how God worked in each of these situations to bring peace and comfort to both of us. And each time, I would ask her if I could pray with her, and she would say yes. It was so cool to see how in the beginning of each conversation, there was a heaviness in her shoulders, but by the end, you could visibly see them rise. On July 22nd, 2020, Laura Blackman and I met with Trina in her backyard, and we were chatting about God. Laura asked Trina if she wanted to say yes to Jesus. Right there under the warmth of the sun, Trina said yes, and we prayed with her and we celebrated with her. Looking back now, I realized God was putting prayer evangelism in my heart even before hearing about this lifestyle. The 4 steps. Start with blessing, praying for Trina without her knowing about it. Spend time hanging out in our backyards, talking about gardening. Meet needs, baking bread and responding to Trina's texts for a listening ear. and share Jesus was just such a natural progression as our friendship grew. God loves Trina and gave me his heart for her when we moved next door. It is so encouraging to look back over these years to see how God has used so many different situations to meet Trina where she is and when she needed him the most. In the past, I would have let fear take over and stop me from obeying God's nudges. But over the years, I am learning that if I want to reach those around me, I can't listen to my fear. This story didn't happen overnight. It was written over years of baby steps and small wins. And over time, a relationship was built where Trina felt she could trust me with her burdens, and I felt more comfortable sharing about Jesus. Both mine and Trina's faith have grown during this time, through good days and hard days, on an emotional roller coaster. And since then, Trina has been so open with questions about God, her struggles, and her growing faith. It has been so neat to see how her questions have caused me to go searching for the answers as to why I believe the things that I do. So, our story is not done yet, and we have many chapters to go. But I hope that this is an encouragement to you and a blessing to you, and one that will inspire you to take the next step to pray for God's heart for those around you. Don't underestimate small beginnings. Thanks for listening, and I hope to hear your story in the months and years to come. Be brave, step out in faith, and just watch how God is going to work through you.